You know, God is your employer, and we have to shift our brains to understand that He cares about everything in our life. He's also your healer. He's your nutritionist. He's your doctor. And that's why it's such a joy to have my guest today, Dr. Neil Goodman, otherwise known as Dr. G. And he has written an incredible book. He has a wonderful website. He is no stranger to this audience, and we so enjoy him coming back and taking very big medical thoughts, principles, and terms, and then breaking them down so that we can live our best life, our John 10:10 life, right now on earth. And so, Dr. G, thank you for coming.
Nice to be here, Beck.
We appreciate you so much. And today, we're going to continue talking about things that affect all of us. And I just, as you and I were speaking about this subject, you started talking about low energy and brain fog and fatigue and mood swings. And everyone can relate to that. There are days of the week, seasons of the month, seasons in life, high pressure times that we're going, what is wrong with me? And how can I help my body do better? So we're going to talk today about the medical explanation. We're going to talk about these little things called mitochondrias, right?
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
By the end of today's show, you're going to know all kinds of things about oxidative stress, mitochondrias, and all these other little medical terms. So stay with us. All right. So how can we identify these things, understand how our body works, and then how do we get rid of some of these symptoms that we're experiencing more and more, it seems like, in our society?
Right. Well, I think the first thing to understand is that, if we can understand an analogy, I think it sometimes makes the science a little less difficult to,
Right.
Understand. And one of the things that I relate to energy is a factory. If a factory has enough resources, if it has enough fuel, if it has enough people working inside the factory, then the factory makes lots and lots of product. But what if that factory fails? Well, when the factory fails, then everything essentially fails. The production line goes down, the quality of the product goes down, and essentially they can't get out what they need to do. Well, your cell is that factory. And if the factory has a failure of its little energy source, then essentially the factory fails. So that's essentially what mitochondria are. Mitochondria are the factories in our cells. They're what make all of our energy. And if we don't have that, the cells can't do what they're programmed to do.
And so often you hear it as a doctor. I hear it just as a woman, a mom, in around people is, I want more energy. I need more energy. So we even pray and ask God to give us more energy. So how can we activate, how can we protect these cells or these factories?
Right. Well, if you recall in our previous talks, and I think we've had a couple before where we talked about oxidative stress, this big thing that is essentially inflammation of the world, attacking your body systems, right? We've already come up with the idea of NRF2, which was the signal to turn back on the process of healing.
So rings the doorbell.
Rings the doorbell to turn on the process of us making huge amounts of antioxidants so that we could restore ourselves. So that's number one. We want to reduce our oxidative stress. Also, we do that not only by taking supplements to turn on that NRF2 signal, but also by taking the bad things out of our lives.
Yeah.
Poisons and exposures and artificial medicines that maybe we don't need. So that's huge. Eating cleanly. If we can reduce that burden, then we help. That's the first step in reducing this process that's downgrading our ability to heal and to perform. The second step is to try to get those mitochondria to be repaired.
Yeah.
Because they're part of the cell. They're being damaged by the same thing that the cells are being damaged, oxidative stress. It injures the mitochondria, they can't perform, and the cells slow down. And what happens when a cell slows down? What do you think happens?
Slow metabolism.
Sluggish. Exactly.
Fatigue.
Perfect. Exactly. Gaining weight is another one. That's a huge factor for people, right? Why am I hitting like age 30 or 40 and now it seems like I'm eating the same amount of food, but yet I'm gaining weight? Why can't I think as fast?
Right.
Why can't I perform as well on exercise as I used to do, like it was when I was a kid?
Right.
And the reason is because your mitochondria have been injured. So what we want to do is we want to be able to save those mitochondria. We want to be able to increase their numbers.
Heal them.
Heal them, right.
So resurrect them.
Exactly. And that's really what this is all about. This is about temple care. This is about getting your body back to where it needs to be so that you can perform what God intended you to do, what your purpose was on earth, right? So that's the big thing.
So someone watching, Dr. G, how can they get their energy back? How, I think you said that the mitochondria are like the powerhouse to the soul, right?
The powerhouse to the cell,
Okay.
Yeah, so think of the cells that do the most work. Your brain.
Brain is a big one.
Huge one, right? I mean, if you think about it, the brain actually makes electrical signals. How does an organ or a tissue create electrical impulses? That's a huge thing. Obviously, that takes a lot of energy, right? A chemical reaction has to take place.
Right.
How about the heart? In order to beat millions of times in your lifetime, it uses huge amounts of energy. Muscles, which have to contract multiple times. The heart is, of course, a muscle. Your red cells, which are very, very active, they're very metabolically active, seeking out threats. They have to do with your immune system. Your immune system has a huge amount of energy that it needs, and it derives all of that from the mitochondria. So knowing that the mitochondria are so important, what we have to do is to do two things. One, replace those dead mitochondria, make them new again, bring them back up in their numbers and their levels so that a cell that only had 3 maybe now has 500.
Wow.
Right? Because that's really what they need to perform. If you only had 3 cells or 3 mitochondria in your cell, the cell is essentially on its deathbed.
Right.
It's getting ready to quit. The second thing is to make the cells more resilient to that oxidative stress hurting them in the first place.
So build them up.
Build them
right?
up, make them more resilient, give them a defense system.
Right.
So those are the two things that we want to do with regard to mitochondria.
And we're not getting the things that we need to help our cells operate effectively in our food groups right now.
That's true.
It doesn't exist anymore.
That's true.
The farming industry and the soil is compromised. So much is compromised. So we have to do these things through choices.
Correct.
Nutrition.
Correct.
Supplements.
Yes,
okay.
Supplements. And, you know, people poo-poo supplements, and everyone is very quick to have the quick fix and take a drug. And so what are the drugs that people do for low energy? And let's just be real about it.
Coffee.
They take coffee, and I know, we love our coffee, don't we?
Yes, we do.
But also other stimulants,
yes.
which may be pharmacologic
yeah.
stimulants, drugs that are stimulants that you need a prescription for. These are all artificial ways to increase your energy. But really, it's sort of a double-edged sword. You're burning your candle twice as fast.
Because it's trying to to get you up, quick.
You notice I used that term, though, burning the candle? Mm-hmm. What was the term that I used in our previous talk, if I can provoke you in an answer for
about
that?
the inflamed
Remember,
flame?
this is a teaching session,
right? I know. I love when you teach.
Okay.
We want to be taught.
So you're inflamed, right? So when you burn the candle at a higher speed, you inflame, you create more heat. You're forcing what mitochondria that you have to burn up faster and faster. When they finally give out, they die. Right. And when they die, the cells die. Now, we have a process in our body that our body is able to gobble up dead cells that are no longer performing. And that has a special word, and it's called self-eating.
Like Pac-Man.
Exactly like Pac-Man. And so it's like, and it's just the same process of like when cells eat up a bacteria, and that's a good analogy, you know, if you try to kill a virus, the white cells are trying to gobble it up and get rid of it and destroy it. But we have cells that are dead or dying, but they don't realize they're dead yet. So they hang around, and those cells are called senescent cells, like senile, they're senile cells. They're around, but they're not doing anything.
We don't want those.
We don't want them because they're hugely inflammatory. They cause all kinds of cytokines to be released. Now, that word sounds familiar to you, doesn't it? Mm-hmm. Cytokines, we talk all about cytokines as a mechanism by which certain evil viruses in the world are hurting us because they create a storm. Yeah. Well, these cytokines are inflammatory, and they increase our metaflation, this inflammatory process. And they cause us to feel achy and sore and not feel good and have low energy.
Swelling.
Yes.
All that yucky
All
stuff.
that yucky stuff, so it makes you not want to get out of bed because you have no energy, right? Or it gives you a bad headache and you can't perform and you can't think.
Yeah.
You're just tired all the time, right?
And that's no way to live.
Exactly. We don't want a crippled self-eating process. We want to stimulate this thing called autophagy. Autophagy means to self-eat. And it is a healthy mechanism that we have to clean ourselves of debris and toxins. Well, it just so happens that NRF2, the thing we talked about before, helps to stimulate autophagy and the self-cleaning mechanism. But in order to do that, you need energy.
Yeah.
So you need to also help those mitochondria to keep the cells afloat. And if we do that, then we return to a state where we can think better.
Yes.
We have less fog, and we do that through supplements. There are supplements that, again, talk to this genetic pathway. Remember, we had these encoded pathways that God gave us?
Like the
NRF2.
CD, right? Like the CD.
Like the CD.
Yeah.
Right. We're polishing that disc so it can be read again. And we're talking to the cells to turn on that NRF1 pathway, which is the mechanism that helps to double and triple the number of mitochondria that we have. It's basically a doorbell wake-up call.
Yeah.
You push the button, the cells wake up, and they start making more mitochondria, and the ones that are there are become tougher and quicker to respond and to be resistive of these bad things that are in our environment.
Yeah.
And in that way, the body gets healthy. Now, all of a sudden, it has energy sources, and you can start to do the things that you didn't think you could do. You start to lose a little weight, you have more energy for exercise, you persist longer, you can concentrate better when you do your homework. You know, it has huge, huge implications. And maybe for some, it means that they can get off some of the medicines,
Yes.
you know, that they've been on for so long.